Hi, this is the NICU Lived Network, and we are your hosts. I'm Melinda.
I'm Nat.
And I'm Emma. We are all NICU mothers using our lived experience to partner with health professionals to impact research, advocacy, and clinical practice.
Each week we will bring you something new. It could be a topic highlight, the latest in research, a visit to a NICU, or ways in which you can use your lived experience within the NICU to impact change. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the NICU Lived Network. You're with Nat, Mel and Em. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
It's nice to see you all. And our guest today is Andria Lapare. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for wanting to be here. So Andrea was born in 1985 at 27 weeks. And I don't know, Em and Nat, if you know this, but it's actually her birthday today.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
And she was saying just before we started recording and you guys jumped on that it was a really nice way to celebrate her birthday, to be able to have this chat. And before we jump in, I just wanted to say, I think like all of us are parents, and for us, I think we really underestimated when we started doing these episodes that we would be chatting to adults who were born prem. So I think this is our third episode. And yeah, I think just the fact that you reached out to us and you want to share your story and how valuable that is and the insights. I think that's been a really big piece for us as we've been doing these episodes and moved across this year on just, it's been surprising for me. So thank you so much. It's fantastic. So happy birthday. And in honor of that, let's go back to that day and what you've been told about your birth story.
So I've known my story my whole life. We have an album of pictures from the very first day. I was going through some of them today, as I do fairly often. And then my parents also kept a journal. They would both write, not necessarily every day, but they would both write, fairly often. And they kept that up probably until I was about a year, maybe a year and a half. So even, with coming home and everything. So I have, I can't think of a time that I didn't know my story. And I was talking to my mom actually earlier today about everything, and just the fact that, as you said, talking to adult prematurity survivors, that's a whole different perspective, because we weren't the ones who experienced it as our parents did, of course, because we don't remember, how it all happened, but we are literally the ones who survived it. So for me, I just think it's really important for those of us who know our story to share it, because it matters. And even now at 38, I've been through a lot in 38 years, survived a lot from the beginning, and it's important. So yes, I was born at 27 and 2, November 2nd, 1985. And we never found out a reason. It wasn't preeclampsia. It wasn't, cervical issues, none of that. But yeah, I was born north of London in a little town called Watford. So
I know Watford, yep. That's the English girl here.
Yeah. So we were stationed there in the military. So I was born in England. It's my favorite place outside the US.
Great answer.
And
yep.
Yes. So yeah, I spent 75 days in the NICU. Actually came home on my due date, January 15th, 1986. Let's see, chest tube, grade 3 bleed in my head, at least 10 blood transfusions, multiple spinal taps for weeks, was on the ventilator for not that long, actually, for 27 weeks. I was on the vent for about 19 days and fought it the whole time, apparently. I was like, okay, can we stop this now? So, went through a lot. Thankfully, didn't have any major complications, no actual surgeries needed or anything in that time. And once I got home, it was more, delayed motor skills, all those sorts of normal delays that you would see in a preemie. Crawling never really happened for me. I could roll though. Rolling got me everywhere. I would get up on my hands and knees and I kind of rock back and forth. My brain knew what was supposed to happen, but I couldn't get my body to do it. And so then I would get very frustrated and I would like yell. It was entertaining apparently for my brother and my parents. And my brother would try to help me. He'd be like, "This is how you do it." And it just was not working. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. And I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 16 years now. Initially, I thought I wanted to be a NICU nurse, but kind of going into more critical areas during nursing school, I discovered that that's not for me as far as doing that as a career. But, definitely passionate about prematurity awareness. If anyone asks me about my story, I will tell you. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger or not, I will tell you. So yeah, that's my story.
So I have a question. Yeah, it's amazing. I love that you're sharing it. So my son was 27 weeks and 4 days.
Okay.
Again, didn't know why. So same, everyone's like, why did it happen? We're like, we don't know. How did you find, obviously, from your earlier memories, what were some of the challenges that you had to overcome as a preemie, going through and getting older? What kind of things, and how were you supported through that?
Yeah. So I think some of the main ones just from being younger would just be more like the motor skills, walking later, even like simple things that kids do, like jumping with 2 feet. I was probably well into elementary school before I could actually do that.
Yeah.
And even now, some things are just, I have to stop and think about them first, and then my body will do them. Like I know in my brain how to do it, but I have to sit there and kind of think about it a little bit. So I think for us, with my parents and my brother and everything, it was just practice. It was just, she'll do it eventually. She's stubborn, that's for sure. So she's not gonna not do it. She'll just do it eventually. But yeah, I'd say that was probably the main thing. Thankfully the physical complications that I had in the NICU, they did resolve themselves. But I still have, like, if you were to image my brain, which I have had a few times over the years, my ventricles are a lot bigger than your typical because of the bleed that I had in my head. So I've had many a radiologist kind of freak out about that. So I have to warn them ahead of time and be like, okay, it's not going to look normal, but this is old news. This is the way it is. So
That's great.
And
it's amazing. I think amazing.
I was just going to say, and probably linking back to what Mel was saying, I think the thing that has been the most surprising thing is hearing from so many adults who were ex-premies and hearing their stories, and that their story or their experience as a preemie didn't finish, once they hit a certain age, like, 5 years old or when they went to school, which is an assumption I always made was, when they're ready for school, that'll be it. Like, their preemie story will be, we won't need to mention that. But the fact that you're saying that when you have an appointment, you have to kind of flag with them already.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, as a survivor and then also as a nurse with my medical knowledge, it's like your birth history matters forever. Like I can't,
Wow.
Tell a doctor, yeah, I was born at 27 weeks and had this and this and this, but it's all fine now. It's all gone now. It's like, no, this lives with me forever. So I think in that sense, as mothers and other, parents of premature kids, just know that for your own knowledge and for theirs as well. I think it's important as they are getting older and they're kind of taking ownership of their story and their history. It's important for them to know. And I know it's, everyone's different as far as, how they share it with their kids. whether it's, verbally or pictures or however, parents like to share with their kids, but it's important. It's important to know. And it's not something, I don't know if ashamed is the right word, but that's definitely like, we're survivors and we're stubborn, we're strong, we've been through a lot. And for most of us, for other prematurity survivors that I've met over the years, like that continues. I don't know about your kids, but usually we're a pretty spunky bunch. So it's important. It's not like, and I've heard it too as a nurse, like, oh, by the time they're 2, they'll be caught up, or by the time they start school. It's like not necessarily. And also, when they do catch up, if they do, catch up to normal, it still isn't going to change what happened. That's going to be with them forever.
And do you think it's helped you? Sorry, I was going to say, do you think it's helped you that your parents have shared that, everything with you,
Yes.
the photos, the journals, and
definitely. And I think just the kind of person that I am, I've always been very curious. So I think because my parents shared it, from a very young age, like, this is your album of pictures. This is, why you look like this versus your brother's pictures, complete, different situations. So yes, I think that has been very helpful. And then obviously, as I've gotten older and, taken ownership of my own story, my own health history, and being able to share that with, my doctors and things like that, has definitely been helpful. And I think for doctors in general, like I very rarely do I see that even on like paperwork when you're going to a doctor, like what is your, like, they'll list down like previous surgeries or things like that. But it's like actual like history of like, were you born prematurely? Like I just recently established with a new doctor and that was actually on the paperwork. I was very surprised. So it's something you need to realize that it doesn't go away. And it's something that they need to know.
That was actually going to be my question. So you've just answered it. Like what's been, because we've advocated for that and we think it's, as we're learning more, that it's really important, particularly when you move out of, I guess, the NICU and pediatricians, but when you just go to like your general doctors, that they're not looking at that being part of the conversation. So I was going to ask, like, what kind of reception do you get? And we hope by continuing to have these conversations that eventually there will be a movement where it is part of the story. And you're right, they ask you your history in terms of, surgeries and medications and, anything like that, but they don't ask your birth story. And that should be a major part of the picture.
It should. And it seems, I'm not up on what, like pediatric paperwork would look like for doctors and stuff, but I know as an adult, we're not asked. So I think it's something that's, not just in the UK or Australia, it's here too, that we're not asked. That's not standard on paperwork. And I mean, I'm sure with, pediatrics and stuff, they probably ask it up to a certain age. Like, did your child have any complications with their birth or whatever? And if I ever see that on paperwork, I'm like, oh, get ready, because it's a story. It's like, did I ever?
On the flip side of that, if you're offering the information as an adult, what's the reception? Like, what's the doctor's response to that? Do they consider it? Do they take it on board?
Yeah, they do for the most part. I mean, I have to say that the majority of doctors, because I don't get asked and it's not on paperwork, it's not something that I generally just volunteer. Okay. But if I need to mention it, like I said, with, brain imaging or anything else that, is relative, then I definitely will mention it because it, it makes a difference. But I think just in general, it needs to be mentioned. And then, I mean, we can't make the doctor do anything, but they need to realize that it matters. And we're not just saying it just to say it. So.
You mentioned earlier that you're kind of in touch with adult ex-premies, and I'm just wondering,
Do you guys get together and are there kind of certain themes or things that come up as a based on your shared experience?
Yeah, over the years, I've talked to several, just recently actually connected with Christina, who you guys interviewed on your podcast. Yeah. We follow several different of the same, accounts on Instagram related to prematurity. So we're messaging each other back and forth and discovered that, she was born in the end of October of 86 and I was born the beginning of November of 85. So we're very similar in our birth dates. So we, kind of shared our stories back and forth. So yeah, I think the main thing for those who I've talked to is to know our stories and to share them. And it's not, I don't think it should be, oh, well, that happened, but now it's all gone and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like, no, this is a part of us. And this, like, I wouldn't be who I am without that. I'd be a different person because all of those experiences and just how I was born, that influences who I am. So I think it's important.
I was going to ask you about your school life because I know with parents, that's probably a really big challenge or concern is like, how do you navigate school life and what kind of extra support and things like that? So from your experience, like it's really valuable for us to know what school life was like for you, particularly, primary school and then into high school.
Right. So for me, it was probably a little bit different than your typical because we were in the military and because we moved so much. I was actually homeschooled for most of school. So for me, it was my mom was my teacher. So, I started out, as most kids do with, your letters, your numbers, colors, all those kind of things. And if there was a certain concept or, something that just took me a while longer than your typical kid, then my mom just, we just went over it more and just, practice. And I think that's kind of how we just did things, whether it was motor skills or school, it was just practice. Because my parents knew that I was definitely smart enough to know and that I knew all the things. It was just more of the actual, like sometimes writing of letters or numbers or whatever, I'd get them backwards or whatever the case may be. So it wasn't the knowledge, it was the execution, I think, for school. And then math has never been my strong suit. And I do remember that long division was very frustrating. And I don't know even now if I would, if I had to sit there and like write it all down, that long division would even still happen for me.
I think a lot of people might be like,
and it's like, thank God for calculators, basically. Yeah.
And then what about opportunities to like interact with your peers and other children and things like that?
Yeah. So we would try to be, whether it was through our church or through different homeschool groups, we definitely socialized with other kids. My brother's 4.5 years older than me. So, he had his friends, I had my friends. We would all kind of get together in a big group with, the kids and their parents and that kind of thing. So we never, felt isolated or, held back or anything like that as homeschooled kids. And because being in the military, that's its own community. So, we had the military aspect and the homeschool aspect, and we just found other people that did the same. And then I did go to actual school starting in 7th grade. And by then, I would say I was on track with, with my peers as far as schoolwork and stuff. So it wasn't ever, oh, Andrea needs extra help, by that age. We had kind of worked all those things out when it was my mom being my teacher. So,
yeah. And when you were younger, did you, because obviously you're very open about your story, did you share with other peers when you went into year 7, the prematurity backgrounds? It's interesting because we're very open with our son and he tells everybody everything. So he's 9 and he quite happily shared that he was a premature baby. He has this, he has that. And I'm just interested to know if you did and how it was received.
Yeah, I did. And I think because, once you get to know new friends, wherever you live, like they just knew that, I'm a sharer. That's just how it goes. And if you ask Andrea about her birth story, she's going to tell you. So yes, I never had any sort of reception like, oh, she's telling us the story again, or, why do you keep talking about it, or whatever. So thankfully, yeah, I didn't have any issues in that regard. So I would say, to any kids, no matter how old they are, if you know your story and you want to share it, then share it.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Yeah, I take away from the conversations I've had with yourself and other adult primaries is that perhaps I need to kind of talk to my own kids about their primary story. Like they know, but I guess it's, I don't know. Probably need to, like, don't really kind of, I think things like sharing photos with them and just maybe just talking a little bit more about, they know the work I do in its advocacy and they know so much in terms of they were born early, but I don't really, it just comes on, or maybe.
Yeah. And how old are your kids?
9.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're old enough to understand, it's not like they're, 2 or 3 to where they're not understanding, what happened and stuff. And like you said, you have pictures and, and for kids of that age, I think they're old enough to, have you explain it and be like, this is how you were born. This is what happened, and some of the pictures, I don't know if scary is the right word, maybe for some kids, but it's like, this is you. And the reason why, this may look different or, scary or whatever is because you were born so little and so early and you had to have help, with your breathing or whatever it may be. Yeah. So I think just kind of explaining to them how they can understand it. And then, of course, as they get older, if they want to ask more questions, of course, it sounds like you guys are all open to that, as you're sharing your story and everything. So, yeah, my biggest advice for parents and for prematurity survivors both is share your story, because, the parents have their perspective of it, of course, but then we have our own perspective. And then, and the more the more that you can, I guess, own it in a sense. But, this happened to me, this happened to my family, this is how we got through it. And, if they can share their story with somebody else, it might be helpful in one way or another. So.
Can I ask you in your experience and your connections, because all the adult prems that we've spoken to so far are all female and we're all mums of boys.
Okay.
So I don't know whether, is it a girl thing that, to be so interested in the story? Like my son's 19 and he knows obviously his story, and I've got the journal and all of that, but it's not something he's gone back to, or I don't think he would know how many days he was in hospital and how many days he was on this, and that he had a grade 2 brain bleed, like all those like minute details. It's not really something he's come to. Yeah, so I'm just curious, and if there are any, adult males that were born prem, we would love to chat.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say that I haven't come across too many in my own experience that are, that are adult men now who necessarily share their story. I don't know that they don't know it, but they don't necessarily share it publicly. They have to be out there for sure. You guys all have boys, so, so I don't know if it's a girl thing, and it's, for me, it's because I'm such a curious little person, and I have been that way forever. And the fact that my parents were, they were going to share it with me anyway. So, but yeah, I think, as you have a 19-year-old, you guys all have 9-year-olds. So, your kids are still, growing up and stuff. So I would say, if they bring it up, or if you want to know, like, ask them, be like, do you want to know all the details? Like, you think, and then of course, as they get older, stuff may change as far as, hey, mom, what all happened and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, I would love to hear as well, because I don't see that very often from adult male prematurity survivors. So if you can find them, that would be great.
Exactly.
I think it's the male-female difference. I think if I look at my husband and how he looks at the journey we've been through, he's like, well, we've been through it now, Emma. So it's all good, kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas
it happened,
I think
it's done.
it's done. And I think my son's the same.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I mean, even with us, like, it's not that my dad won't talk about it. He will. We talked about it not that long ago, but me and my mom definitely talk about it more often and in more detail. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's probably part of it is, the whole male-female difference, but who knows?
I guess the value, and even I've noticed across the years, is ingraining in him to mention the birth story. So not too long ago, he got his eyes checked, and I happened to be with him, and I'm the one that brought it up. Born at 27 weeks, he didn't have ROP, and all of that stuff. So even if it's he doesn't want to share like the emotional side, as long as I guess, we have the opportunity to expose them to that kind of awareness that when you're out in the world and as you're an adult and we're not there in every situation, that this is part of your story that may need to be mentioned. Maybe that's the value that we can offer.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, more from the physical side, knowing that, whichever body system was affected, that needs to be addressed. Like for me, I didn't have ROP either, but I do have a lazy eye. I've had it my whole life. And actually just a couple of years ago, I actually had to have surgery for it. And I hadn't had surgery on it my whole life up until a couple of years ago. So that was interesting. And so, yeah, I think, definitely as they get older and are kind of, taking control of their own health and appointments and things like you said that mom and dad necessarily aren't there with them for that, they can at least have some sense of I was born this gestation, I had this and this, just FYI, just in case it's important.
And I guess we've bombarded you with lots of questions today, but are there any questions or anything that you would like to raise?
So for you guys there in Australia, I don't know much about your healthcare system there. So it sounds like there's quite a lot of awareness, I think, of, NICUs and all that comes with them and all that. Would you say that that's true for you guys there?
I would say yes and no, I think would be my answer to that. I think we're more aware of it because we've been through the system. I would say a lot of people that haven't had premature children, not necessarily are as aware of the work and the prematurity side of things that they could be. Is my perception. I don't know if you agree with me, Mel, on that, but...
No, I do. And I was about to say that's part of the reason why we started doing these episodes, was that we felt like there was so much going on that was really closed. And particularly, we've had the opportunity to be parent representatives in research and in advocacy and those kind of areas, but not like, how do you expose that? How do you allow more parents to see this side and have these conversations and be a part of it? So yes and no is definitely the answer. And we hope that we're playing a small part to be able to increase, the knowledge and the education and the opportunities that exist when we... I've written down what you said, like, know your story and share it. Like, I think that's such a good takeaway from our conversation, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, knowing my story my whole life and then being a medical professional now, and if I ever have my own children, like, I think a lot of women, they go into pregnancy and labor and delivery, a lot of times naive and not even realizing that it could happen. Where for me, I would not be surprised because, I know from the beginning that it can happen to anybody. And, we don't always know the reason why. yeah, I mean, I think even here in the States, you know, there are a lot of different organizations that bring awareness, but, you know, we still need to continue to have it out there, whether it's from the parents' perspective or the survivors or the doctors and, you know, all the people involved. It's still something that needs to be shared, and for everyone to realize that it can happen to you, and it's happened to a lot of us, and it influences who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, we love that you and Christina have connected. And if
Yeah.
people want to find out more about you, we'll put it all in the description. But how can people find you, Andria?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I think I had sent you my Instagram handle, so you can definitely put that in the description. So I'm more than happy to, you know, message and chat with whether it be parents or survivors or whoever. If you have a NICU story and want to connect, feel free. I'm always open to that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here with
Thank
us
you.
and having this chat, and wishing you a happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank
Enjoy.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye. That's a wrap on another episode of the NICU Live Network. Thanks for joining us today. To stay connected, please make sure you're following us on social media.
And if you found value in this episode, please share, like, or comment.
We'll see you on the next episode.